Mariah Mae versus Toni Storm. And there's a couple things I need to say about this. That first of all, I've been reviewing AEW for a couple of months, and I want to continue doing that. So like, share, and subscribe. But also, I like talking about fantasy booking and constructive criticisms. Let's make AEW better again. It's always good to just share advice on how it could be a better company. And I do want to say that, definitely what happened between Mariah Mae and Toni Storm, it was very disturbing. Like, I think that I'm happy that I actually turned off my television. Like, I didn't. They ended the match, and what happened was I thought that was going to be the end of it because you wouldn't expect something like that to happen. And I saw the clip of what happened online, really, with Mariah Mae beating down Toni Storm. But it was really disturbing because I think, Toni Storm kind of looked very naive, and she had, like, the big lipstick. So she kind of almost looked like, a child or like a big baby type of thing, really. Or, there's some people who have mental health issues that look very vulnerable. So I think that when I saw it, I just felt I felt a lot of anger, and I felt a lot of, like, sadness because I've lived a life where I've seen very vulnerable people being taken advantage of, including myself, really. But with professional wrestling, if something can elicit emotion in you, that's good, really. And I've also kind of said too that with Mariah Mae, I did not want her to win this for two reasons. I felt like you would never see something like this happen. And I also felt that if you had her win and her gimmick is to be the regular Toni Storm, they're going to have a match at Wembley Stadium and it's going to be them being silly and funny, and it's not going to be a good match. It's almost like if you had Orange Cassidy versus the Dark Order. If they ever had a match at Wembley Stadium, we know that you're going to see the comedy kicks and a bunch of silly spots, and that's not appropriate. If you had a situation, let's say Orange Cassidy was defending the international title, and then he was facing the Dark Order, a Dark Order member, you would want it to be a serious type of thing, really. Or let's say if you had a match between Scott Steiner and Mark Briscoe, you kind of know that they both have very funny voices, really. So what would happen if they had a match at Wembley Stadium and it was just them, like, talking on the microphone every 2 seconds to make everybody laugh that they both speak in a bit of gibberish? So I felt like with Toni Storm and Mariah Mae, it was going down a direction of it's going to be, as I said, very 48-hour film project, just dumb comedy, silly comedy that they think is funny, but it actually hurts the wrestling business because it's actually not funny. It's them just being silly and campy and cute. But with Mariah Mae, I would say that there's a couple of things. I want to give you, like, 5 reasons why I think Mariah Mae should be champion and why I think Willow Nightingale should have won this. The 5 things I'll say about Mariah Mae is that you need to build a new star, and I'm all about building new stars in AEW. Mariah Mae hasn't done anything to me that's kind of, like, pushed her to the level of a new star, really. I do think that with this, she could be a new heel. She could say something like, with Toni Storm, I'm so sick of you frolicking around. I'm so sick of you being this starlet. You're wrong with the women's division. And look at this title. More people are talking about Mercedes Moné and Jade Cargill and so many other people or the TBS championship. But you've been frolicking around with this. What has Hikaru Shida done? Wasn't Rio the first champion when there was a more serious wrestler like Nyla Rose that could have been champion? The inaugural champion. Like, she can kind of, like, once again talk about the gripes and grievances of the women's title. She can also talk about, what Toni Storm represents. Like, even though Toni Storm reinvented herself, and that's a great thing, she can also talk about how Toni Storm was a bad champion. Because, again, while people love the gimmick and the story, it's really run its course. It's done it for too long, and then also it's a silly gimmick. So, and that's not a good thing. When your championship title is silly, but your secondary title is serious. Gunter. Like, imagine if Roman Reigns was silly, or he was doing something like face painting with his kid, and then you actually had Gunter be the serious champion that people wanted to see. It wouldn't really work. If that was in that hypothetical, if you have Roman was just silly and goofing off, but then you had Gunter as intercontinental champion being serious, so it's not good, and I think those are two things. You can make a new star. You can also talk about points that I think people relate to with Toni Storm and the criticism about her. The next thing that you can do with Mariah Mae is that it resets the women's title if she becomes champion. It says, okay, now for a long time, we really had to treat this title as a very serious one. What would happen if you have her beat down Toni Storm, and then Toni Storm is really badly injured, and then, she wants to do more damage to finish her at Wembley Stadium, and then Willow Nightingale just grabs her and just throws her down and says, like, even though I don't like Toni Storm because she's a clown, I do not want to see you pick on somebody. I do not want to see you kill somebody. You have that killer instinct as a champion. This title needs more people with killer instincts. And All Out, it's gonna be Wembley. All Out, it's gonna be Mariah Mae versus Willow Nightingale in a hardcore match. And not necessarily every women's match should be hardcore, but they really need to make a different style of champion with the women's title. I think they need to have a person that's very serious, that wants to have the title, wants to represent it well, and wants to have good matches. Or they talk to Toni and says, like, okay, sometimes we should main event the show. Sometimes I should be leading teams. Like, what would happen if you had a woman's blood and guts and other things like that? Like, you really need a champion that wants to have that title be a big deal. Or you need to have a champion that's very serious. Or you need to have a champion that can have charisma and talk, and not like Hikaru Shida, who doesn't talk and just has great matches. You have to have somebody who represents, an American champion, which is somebody who can talk, somebody who can have storyline to feud and great matches. You don't have like these Japanese Dave Meltzer wrestlers who actually are just there just to do the flips and do the sequences, and it doesn't really, it doesn't really tell a story, really. Like, you look at Okada, and he's trying to, like, in some segments you have him speak, you have him, like, be like, okay, these are my brothers as well. Somebody like Okada, I have a lot of respect for, because he's actually trying to translate to an American audience. You have somebody like Takeshita, same exact thing, really. Like, he's not known for speaking, but at least with Don Callis can manage for him. But he's translating more to an American audience, really. And when I see, like, Toni Storm, she really translates to more of a comedy character. When I see Hikaru Shida, I don't remember any time she actually spoke on the microphone and actually had bravado. And same thing with Rio. I think the only person that's really done that is Nyla Rose, but I don't remember any of her promos as well. But you need a women's champion that actually is somebody who actually can elicit emotion, pick fights, have storylines. And I think the two other things is that you need to kind of like do a better job with the women's title, because honestly the TBS title is the better title, really, because obviously you had Jade Cargill went to WWE, and now she's making more money and she has more popularity. You have a Mercedes Moné, who is the most popular woman in the company, really, and Mercedes Moné versus Dr. Britt Baker, that's a Wembley Stadium worthy match. Not Mariah Mae versus Toni Storm, really. So you have to kind of get to a point where that is like the must-see title, really. As I said, it's like the Intercontinental title. If you did Gunter versus The Undertaker, people would want to see that. If you did Roman Reigns versus Sami Zayn, while some people like those wrestlers, obviously Undertaker versus Gunter would be a better one. You kind of see what I'm saying, that hypothetical. It seems like the more serious match, and the match that people want to see is with a secondary title instead of your main event title. And I think like the last thing that I would say with Mariah Mae is that, this really gives her a chance. This really gives her a huge opportunity to, be a top heel in the women's division. Like, you do have that with Mercedes, but a different type of heel. And I definitely think that, with her, just the way that she brutalized Toni Storm, you also have a woman wrestler now that has no problem of just taking things a little too far, really. With Mercedes Moné, I do not imagine Mercedes Moné like cutting Britt Baker's face, or I don't think Britt Baker would do that to Mercedes Moné. I think that with Mercedes Moné, she's more into having an athletic match, really. But if you have somebody that's more like ruthless and violent and cutting the pretty girls, that could be something for Mariah Mae as a heel type of thing. She can kind of be like a Randy Orton type of heel, where she just takes things too far and just is a brutal, ruthless, bitch. Just like the Deadly Viper Squad, if I'm saying the name correctly, in Kill Bill. Like she can kind of be that brutal and that brutal person, really. So, it really opens a lot of doors for her. It really gives her a chance to fit a role in AEW. And it gives her a chance to kind of really reset the women's championship. You need to kind of make that a must-see title. And you need to kind of like have somebody that can tell stories and be a good, heel or babyface. And you need to step away from comedy. You have to step away from just the Toni Storm reign. It's really run its course, and you really not found a champion. I think that's been worthy in the past couple of years. You have Nyla Rose, who should have been the first champion and the big deal, but didn't get that. And when you had Nyla Rose, it was a little too late, really. And then you had and you didn't really follow up with any good feuds with Nyla Rose, really. And then you had Jade Cargill 500 days, but she never were challenged for the women's championship, which makes no sense, really. So it's really been a wasted title. The next thing that I would say, I think, as concerns for this, I'm not going to talk about Willow being a better choice, but I'm going to say this, really, that I think the issues is that you just made Toni Storm and you made Mariah Mae a heel. So what they could do is say that because Mariah Mae is the heel, have Toni Storm beat her, then continue this Hollywood starlet thing. And that's not what they should do. They should have Mariah Mae really needs to win this. And I think that should be another video. But Mariah Mae really needs to win this because the Toni Storm thing, it has to come to an end. And if you continue this, I don't think you're going to have a lot of... I really don't think you're going to have... a lot of just contenders, and it's just going to be more of a continuation and running this Toni Storm Hollywood starlet thing into the mud, really. It's run its course, really. The next thing that I would say is that, you never know with Mariah Mae. I don't remember anything that she's done where she's talked to the microphone or be like a big, or like, as I said, you have to kind of communicate with the audience. You have to elicit an emotion outside of matches and actions. You have to know how to talk, really. You have to be a big deal, and I wonder if she can actually do that. And then the other thing that I would say is Willow Nightingale is probably the better champion. She knows how to talk. She has really great moves, and then she's not being somebody with a women's title, really. So I think that delaying Willow Nightingale is a huge issue. Then it kind of goes down to that racism thing. I don't think they've had one black person be the AEW Women's Champion, except for Nyla Rose, who was part Native American, I believe. But the problem is that, you just had Jade Cargill, a black woman, hold the TBS title for 500 days. Then you have Athena hold the ROH title for over 500 days. And then you have Mercedes Moné, really. So is the TBS title and the ROH title the black woman's title, really? And you look at Willow Nightingale, I believe she's African American, really. So it's not a good look when you just have it just be, white people or Japanese people, when you see other people of color who are wrestlers be way more capable. It would be the exact same thing if you had only black people be the U.S. and the tag team champion, or how you had a lot of talented black wrestlers in WWE, but nobody held the WWE championship until Kofi Kingston. And then after that, they did the butterfly effect, where they say instead of The Rock being Samoan, he's black and Samoan, therefore he was the first black champion, when he was always considered a Samoan champion. And then the other thing is that if you consider The Rock as a black champion from the 90s all the way to 2020, you didn't have a black WWE champion. You only had them for world heavyweight titles. So it's not a good look, really. So I think that Willow Nightingale would be the better champion. And I do think that it's very jarring when you don't have her or Jade Cargill or Mercedes Moné or other people. There's an element of racism, and then there's also an element of favoring Japanese wrestlers, because we know, like, as Cornette and people talk about that, Kenny Omega's in charge of the women's division. He likes the Joshi wrestlers, if I'm saying it correctly, the Japanese women wrestlers. So that's why you have Shida. That's why you have Rio as the first one instead of somebody who was more believable, like Nyla Rose, really. So there's things to say about that. And then the other thing too is that this is a huge expectation for Mariah Mae to rebuild the women's division. So is Tony Khan going to let that happen? Is Mariah Mae around the right people that say, okay, you need to revamp the women's title, and it needs to be a title with a serious champion who can create feuds and pick up the ball, really. And we need to kind of make sure that if that's what we do with Mariah Mae, she does this well, she can do her job well, and if not, give it to Will Nightingale, and then just kind of really work hard at just making the women's title a bigger deal, because that's your main championship. If it's really Mercedes Moné with the TBS title, and that becomes a big deal, what you have to do is Mariah Mae has to lose to Willow Nightingale. Then you have to do Willow Nightingale versus Mercedes Moné and unify the title, and then just make Mercedes Moné the women's champion, and then just have that be your women's championship title, because you can't have a secondary title with your biggest star, really, type of thing, really. If John Cena was just the U.S. champion, and then you had someone like Dolph Ziggler as the WWE champion for a long time, makes no sense, really. So there's a lot of expectations on Mariah Mae, but she lives up to them, great. And if they understand that the women's championship, it really needs a renaissance, they have to really get that.